Hello and welcome back. So this video is for class 12th and we will continue with wave optics. So in the previous video we proved the law of refraction, that is the Snell's law using the Huygens principle, right? Today we are going to prove the law of reflection using Huygens principle. Okay. So I hope that you have understood the previous concept, right? The manner in which we proved the law of refraction. Similar logic we are going to use for reflection as well. So this is our reflective surface and AB this is our incident wavefront, right? As we discussed previously, we are going to consider a plane wavefront for this. So what happens? The wavefront is incident at some angle, and how much that angle will be, if we draw normal over here, that angle will be I. That will be our angle of incidence, right? So this wavefront is incident like this, right? And we will see that point A reaches the surface first, but point B has still not reached. Now what will happen? According to Huygens principle, every point on this wavefront will now act as a secondary source, right? And it will create its own wavefront. So now what will happen? A wavefront will be created from B and it will go in this direction. Here it will reach the reflective surface. Let us say it reaches at the point C, right? Let us say time t was taken for the wave to reach from B to C. Therefore, just like previously, we can say BC is equal to V into t. V is velocity of light in that medium. T is the time taken to reach from B to C. So this distance BC will be Vt. Now, when wave is created from B, at the same time a wave is created from A, right? Which will be in this medium. Right now, where that wave will be, it will have to draw an arc having the same length as BC. So this much like this, we are going to get an arc over here. And so where will that the new wavefront, that is a reflected wavefront, will be formed? Wherever the tangent will be drawn from point C to that sphere that we are getting, right? So it will be somewhere over here. So we'll get a arc will be here. At this point, a tangent can be drawn. So point E. Right, so AE, this will be this is where the wave is going to travel. So then you will get EC as your reflected wavefront, right? So what will happen is the wave that is created in this manner will move along this line like this. Okay, getting the idea? So once again, AB, that was our incident wavefront, and EC, that is our reflected wavefront. So whenever any wavefront, whenever wavefront is incident on a plane on a reflective surface, this is what is going to happen, right? Now, how do we prove the law of reflection? So as we said, this angle would be I, that is angle of incidence. By the geometry of the figure, you can see that this angle BAC, this will also be equal to angle of incidence I, right? Now, EC, this was our reflected wavefront. So angle between reflected wavefront and the normal, that will be angle of reflection R. So therefore this angle ECA, this will also be equal to R. Okay. Now let us compare these two triangles EAC and BAC. Okay. So when you look at triangles BAC and ABC, suppose these are 90 degrees, both of them, right? And they are sharing the hypotenuse. So that means angle EAC will be congruent to the triangle EAC will be congruent to triangle BCA, right? Triangle EAC will be congruent with BCA because both of them are having 190 degree, that is right angle, and hypotenuse is also common. That means definitely they are going to be congruent triangles, right? And because they are congruent triangles, by these angles you can see angle I will then be equal to angle R. Why? You can see therefore BAC. So BAC will be equal to ACE. Okay, what is AC? AC is nothing but R. So you can see as these two triangles are congruent, therefore I is equal to R. That means angle of incidence is equal to angle of reflection. This proves the law of reflection. So by using Huygens principle, we have derived the law of reflection, which proves that reflection and both refraction can be proved by the Huygens principle. Just one thing that I forgot to add previously, to prove congruency of these two triangles, one is we have the right angles, then we have this side AC, that is hypotenuse is common, that means equal, and also this side, that is side BC is equal to side AE, because both of them are equal to VT, right? So two sides are common, equal, as well as one angle is right angle. Due to that, these two triangles will be congruent to each other. Okay, just make a note of that point. Okay, so I hope that was understood. Now we move on to the next topic, which is interference of waves. Now what is interference of waves? Now of course you would have seen that if you drop a stone in the in water, right, you are going to see waves being created. If you drop a stone like this, what will happen is the waves will be created from that point wherever the stone fell down. So let us say we draw this dark line. This will mean wherever the water has come up, we see transverse waves, right, in the water, right? So this dark line, this will represent, let us say, one crest, right? As a wave rahega. So this would be the crest. Then this is the trough. So trough we will represent by this dotted line. Once again we will get a crest, and again we will get a trough. Correct? This is what happens when waves are created. So this is one source of wave. Correct? At the same time, if you drop another stone inside, correct, and that stone will also create similar kind of, it will create crests and troughs. Crest and trough. Then what will happen is, as they move along and as the waves start expanding, you see that these crests and troughs, they start interfering with each other. There is a superposition. Correct? This phenomena is called as interference of waves. And we know very well what happens when there is interference. If both the crests, they reach the same point, we are going to get more amplitude. But if a crest meets with another trough, then the amplitude will get cancelled. There will be no displacement, zero displacement. And if one trough meets another trough, the depression would increase. Correct? So this is what is going to happen in this interference, which normally many times we have seen. If you drop two stones in water, you see the ripples being created and they start interfering with each other. You see different types of patterns. Correct? So when we talk about light, right, and we are saying that light is having wave-like properties. So if light is a wave, then it should show this interference properties also. So next we are going to see an experiment which proved that even light waves can show interference. That is called as the Young's double slit experiment. Okay, so before we understand the Young's double slit experiment, we need to understand the concept of coherent sources and incoherent sources. Now what are coherent sources? Coherent sources means if two sources, they are having a constant phase difference between them, those sources we will call as coherent. And if the two sources, the phase difference keeps changing with time, then those sources we will call as incoherent sources. Correct? This is a very simple way to visualize. So coherent sources, you can imagine something like this. So if there are two sources which are creating waves, if the waves go something like this, right, you will say these are coherent sources. Why? Both for these, both the waves, when you reach one wave reaches the crest, the other also is reaching the crest. Right? They are in phase with each other. The difference, the phase difference between them is same. So if the phase difference is similar, we'll call them as coherent sources. But what will incoherent sources look like? They will not have a very fixed phase difference. They might have a phase difference something like this. Correct? There is no well-defined phase difference. It is not a constant one. So coherent sources, phase difference is constant, and incoherent, the phase difference goes on changing. So for example, if you are taking two torches in your hand, okay, torch 1, torch 2 is source 2. So when you focus both the light from both the torches on one point, the waves are going to interfere with each other, and most often it will happen that they are going to be incoherent. They are going to create light which is not going to be in the same phase. Correct? So it is very difficult to create coherent sources. Correct? That is one thing you have to remember. That is why the Young's experiment is so important, because he managed to create coherent sources with a very simple trick. Correct? Next thing, whenever two light sources will interfere, they are going to give rise to some resultant intensity. How much will that intensity be? First you will see the formula for coherent sources. Now I am not giving the proof of this formula, you simply have to learn that formula. So if you are having two coherent sources, each source is having intensity of I naught. Okay, if they are interfering at one point, the resultant intensity by coherent source will be given by I equal to 4 I naught cos square of phi by 2. Okay, I is resultant intensity, which is equal to 4 times I naught. I naught is intensity by each source, and we are assuming they are coherent, they are having similar intensity, into cos square of phi by 2. What is phi? Phi is the phase difference, and obviously you can see if phase difference is let us say pi. Okay, if there is a 180 degree phase difference, then cos square of phi by 2 will be equal to 0. So if the phase difference phi is equal to pi, in that case resultant intensity is going to be 0. So this is like a crest meeting a trough, right? There the resultant intensity will become 0. When will it be maximum? It will be maximum if you get the phase difference phi is equal to 0 or 2 pi, 4 pi, so on. So if the phase difference is 0, in that case you are going to get resultant intensity as 4 times I naught. That is the maximum intensity we can get. So that is one good use of coherent sources. With coherent sources, when they are incident on one point, for 0 phase difference, maximum intensity. For phase difference of pi or 3 pi by 2, etc., we are going to get intensity as 0. Correct? So that is for coherent sources. Now what happens for incoherent sources? Incoherent sources, because the phase difference keeps on changing, we cannot find one value of I. So we have to find the average value of I. That average value of I will be 4 times I naught average of cos square of phi by 2. And average of cos square of phi by 2 will be equal to 1 by 2. So you get resultant intensity as 2 times I naught. Okay, so for incoherent sources, the resultant intensity will be an average, and that average will be equal to double that of the individual intensities. So these two formulae we will remember. For coherent sources, I equal to 4 I naught cos square phi by 2, and for incoherent sources, the average intensity will be 2 times I naught. Now we will see the Young's double slit experiment. Now, as I told you, if we want to study interference of light, we want to have coherent sources, two sources which are having a constant phase difference, which is very difficult to do, right? If you light 2 candles at the same time, there is no guarantee that they are going to be in phase. Means most of the time they will not be coherent at all, right? Because the waves and all, they will keep on changing. So Thomas Young, he was a British scientist. He found out a very genius method of creating coherent sources. So here is what he did. He had a cardboard which were having 2 slits. That is what is called as a double slit experiment. Okay, so there are 2 slits made in a cardboard, and he used a single source of light. Okay, normally for such kind of experiment, you have to use something called as a monochromatic source. Monochromatic means light which is in a single wavelength, right? Because like white light is polychromatic. There are more than it is having 7 different wavelengths, 7 colors. So with white light we cannot use it. So we have to use something like a sodium lamp for it. Okay, so that is a monochromatic source. So he used a monochromatic source, that is S. Now what will happen? This is going to create waves. These waves will start to travel and they will reach these 2 slits. Let us call them S1 and S2. Now when these waves reach the points S1 and S2, we will see the Huygens principle in action. What will happen is both S1 and S2, they will now start acting as secondary sources, and both of them will create the waves now, right? But now what has happened? The same wave illuminated S1 and S2. So the light that is created now, it is going to have a constant phase difference, right? It is going to be, we are going to have 2 coherent sources, and that is why I said this is a very genius method of getting coherent sources. Correct? So now this is basically the setup. So what we have 2 slits, S1 and S2. Then there is a source of light. Normally the source of light is kept quite far away to get the perfect result. So now what will happen? Light will come from S1, light will come from S2, right? Waves are going to, we are going to get waves, and here we will have a screen. Correct? On the screen the light will fall. Now what will happen? They will start to interfere. Correct? When they interfere, there are going to be some spots where we will get constructive interference. Constructive interference means both the waves are going to have zero phase difference. So intensity will be maximum. Also, there will be some points where you will have destructive interference. Destructive interference means you will get one crest and one trough. So the resultant intensity is going to be zero. Correct? So we are going to get such kind of cases. So we will get some bright fringes, then a dark spot, then again bright fringe, again dark spot, again bright fringe. Like this, we get fringes. Correct? So this is the pattern we observe when we are performing the double slit experiment. And when Thomas Young was able to observe this phenomena, that proved conclusively that definitely light is a wave. Because if it was particle, like how Newton had suggested, a particle would never show this kind of behavior. So with this experiment, Thomas Young was able to prove that light is indeed a wave. Now let us start with the derivation. So before we do the derivation, let us understand the setup first. So we have two sources, S1, S2, both illuminated by a common source, S. Distance between S1 and S2 will be small d. For best results, this distance between the two sources should be as small as possible. Then here is our screen. Then distance between the sources and the screen is given by capital D. Okay, that is the distance between screen and the sources. Then from the midpoint, we will draw a line that will be a reference line which will meet at point O. Correct. So point O is going to be equidistant from S1 as well as S2. Right. Now, what we want to find out? We want to find out at which point we are going to get a bright spot and at which point we will get a dark spot. Obviously, at O you will get a bright spot. Correct? Because wave from S1 and wave from S2, it is going to travel the same distance. Correct? As it is traveling the same distance, so definitely it is going to be in phase. And in phase means we are going to get a constructive interference. So O, here you are going to get a bright band. Right? But what about the other spots? So let us select an arbitrary point P, and now we want to find out at P whether we will have a constructive interference or destructive interference. So that is what this particular derivation will be about. Now to find out whether you will have a constructive or destructive interference at point P, we will need to find out something called as the path difference. What will be path difference? The wave from S1 will reach the point P. So how much is the length? That is equal to S1P. Then similarly, from the source S2, the wave will reach point P. The path will be S2P. How much is the path difference? Very simple. Path difference at point P will be S2P minus S1P, which will be equal to N lambda. What is lambda? Lambda is the wavelength of the light that we are using. Correct? And N, this is the integer number. Okay, N will take values 0, plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, so on and so forth. So this, let us call this equation 1. So equation 1, that will give us the path difference. Correct? S2P minus S1P will be equal to N lambda. Correct? And all, of course, it will be along this only. Correct? Either the difference between the path length will be equal to 1 lambda or 2 lambda, so on and so forth. We are not going to get any half values over here. Okay, now for the later part of the derivation, we are going to do some geometric manipulation. Okay, it might look complicated, but it is very straightforward. Basically, we are using only the Pythagoras theorem. What is Pythagoras theorem? For a right angle triangle, hypotenuse square is equal to sum of squares of the other two sides. If you understand this, you are going to understand this later part very easily. Okay, so what will you see now? Let us take this triangle. Okay, S2P and any arbitrary point you can put here. Right? So hypotenuse square, that is S2P square, will be equal to this side square. How much is this side? Capital D. So capital D square plus, how much will be this side? This side will be equal to S plus this one. How much is this part? D by 2. So this will be equal to D square plus X plus D by 2 square. Right? This is S2P square. Then similarly you can write S1P square. This is the triangle for that. Okay, ye wala. So S1P square will be equal to hypotenuse square plus again capital D square plus, now how much will this be? This will be X minus D by 2. Right? So this will be d square x minus d by 2 square. So we have a value for s2p square and s1p square. So therefore we can write s2p square minus s1p square equal to this equation minus this equation. D square will get cancelled. If you expand this, x square यहाँ पर minus sign आ जाएगा. Okay, so x square will get cancelled. Then d square by 4 that will get cancelled. What will be remaining is only the term 2xd by 2. Okay, so 2xd by 2 plus 2xd by 2, that will be 4xd by 2. So you will get s2p square minus s1p square as 2xd. Okay, all I have done is expanded this brackets, okay, and then subtracted s2p square minus s1p square. If you want, let us put equations for it. Let us call this equation 2 and this is equation number 3. So this step will get by subtract equation 2 by equation 3. You should get this. Now this is simple algebra. I am hoping class 12 students will be able to figure this out. So you get s2p square minus s1p square as 2xd. This let us call as equation number 4. So once again, this is the equation 4 that we got. s2p square minus s1p square equal to 2xd. So this is nothing but a square minus b square. How much is a square minus b square? It is equal to a plus b into a minus b. So this you can write as s2p minus s1p equal to 2xd divided by s2p plus s1p. Right? इसको expand कर दिया. So we wrote it as a plus b into a minus b. A minus b we kept it on the LHS and a plus b we put it on the RHS. Fine. So you got s2p minus s1p as 2xd by s2p plus s1p. And this you will see is nothing but equation 1. This is the path difference. But again we want to make some changes here. Now here you will see two values, s2p and s1p. This is s2p, this is s1p. Now of course from the diagram you can see that s2p is much larger than s1p. But if this distance small d is very small and this distance capital D is very large, what happens is s2p becomes almost equal to s1p. Let me repeat that once again. If the distance between slits and the screen is extremely large, right? If that distance is very large, what happens is these two rays, they become almost equal. We are using the word almost. Okay, there will be little bit difference, but it can be considered almost equal. And basically that will be equal to capital D. So this is the assumption we make. And in physics, to arrive at simple formulae, we are going to make use of many such assumptions. So what we are assuming? We are assuming capital D is very much larger than this small d, and because it is very large, you can write s1p is almost equal to s2p, which is almost equal to capital D. So what will happen here? s2p plus s1p will be d plus d. So therefore you will get this part difference from equation 1, n lambda as 2xd upon 2 multiplied by capital D, and then 2 gets cancelled. So you get path difference as n lambda equal to xd by capital D. So at the point P, the path difference between the two waves will be given by this equation, which is xt by d. Now remember this path difference, we are going to use it in the next formula. So here is the equation that we got. We got n lambda is equal to 2x small d by capital D. Okay, n lambda gives the path difference. Or you can rearrange this and say, therefore x is equal to, this x is the distance from the center of the screen. Small x will be equal to n lambda capital D by small d. Let us call this as equation number 5. Okay, x gives distance of point P from the center of the screen, which is given by the formula n lambda capital D by small d. Okay, now what is the significance of this? Based on this distance x will be decided whether that point will be a bright fringe or that is a bright spot or a dark spot. Okay, so hopefully this much is understood, and from this we are going to derive conditions for brightness, that is bright spot and dark spot. So if P is to be a bright spot, okay, that is a constructive interference, then X should be equal to Xn. Xn, the subscript is coming because that is the number of fringe. Xn, which is equal to n lambda d by small d, and n, this n over here should take the value 0 plus or minus 1 plus or minus 2. By this, lambda will take integral values, so we are going to get brightness, bright spot or constructive interference. Okay, so this is the condition for bright spot. Then what will be condition for a dark spot? Okay, or a destructive interference. Destructive interference will be when this lambda is actually an odd integral multiple. So for the condition for destructive interference will be X should be equal to Xn, which is given by n plus 1 by 2 into lambda capital D by small d. Again n will take value 0 plus or minus 1 plus or minus 2, so on and so forth. Okay, so I hope this part was understood. Okay, of course when you do see it for the very first time, it looks a little bit confusing, right? Because many things similar looking formula you are having. Okay, but don't get confused. In the class notes, step by step I have given the derivation. Okay, even some of the smaller steps, they are solved in the entirety. Okay, so you will not have anything missing. Okay, so I hope this was understood. Again, next topic now we are going to see about diffraction. But again, before you see diffraction, this part interference should be understood thoroughly.